There is a small-town feeling that exists in the outer ring of Columbus, Ohio, one that you only understand if you have ever been there in the thick of August. The heat sits heavy on you like a wool coat you cannot take off. The air smells like fried dough and livestock and motor oil, and something sweet you cannot quite identify. Kids are everywhere, darting between adult legs, tugging sleeves, pointing at lights. And for one single night in the summer of 1995, that feeling of warmth and safety and community was the exact thing that made a predator invisible. Her name was Emma Calloway. She was 6 years old. She had red hair that caught the light like a lit match, a face full of freckles so dense they seemed to form constellations across her nose and cheeks, and a laugh that, according to everyone who knew her, was too big for her body. She loved strawberry ice cream. She slept with a stuffed rabbit named Clover. She knew every word to a pop song her mother had tried, unsuccessfully, to get out of her head all summer. On the night of August 14th, 1995, Emma Calloway walked into a county fair with her family and never walked out. 28 years later, a young woman posted a video in front of a donut display at a Walmart in Knoxville, Tennessee. She was laughing, her hair was pulled back, and just behind her left ear, visible for exactly one frame if you knew what to look for, was a small birthmark shaped like a butterfly. The world was about to come crashing into her life in a way she could not have prepared for. And the story of how those two moments connect across nearly 3 decades, across state lines, across everything we think we know about love and desperation and crime, is one of the most quietly devastating cold case recoveries in recent memory. In this video, we are going to walk through what we know, what was missed, what was found, and what remains, even now, incomplete. If you are new here, this channel covers cold cases, missing persons investigations, and the intersections of technology, human behavior, and justice with as much care and accuracy as we can bring to them. If this kind of storytelling matters to you, please consider hitting the subscribe button right now and leaving a like on this video. It genuinely helps this content reach people who are searching for it. We put a lot of work into getting these stories right, and your support makes that possible. Now, let us go back to where this all begins. The summer of 1995 was a specific kind of American summer. The Oklahoma Simpson bombing had happened just 4 months earlier in April, leaving the country shaken and grieving. The O.J. Simpson trial was consuming national attention. The internet was still something most families heard about but had not yet touched. People were trying, in the way that people always try, to find the ordinary things and hold on to them. County fairs, neighborhood cookouts, late evenings on front porches. The Calloway family was no different. David and Renee Calloway lived in a suburb just outside Columbus called Glenbrook Crossing. It was the kind of neighborhood where people knew each other's dogs by name. David worked in logistics for a distribution company. Renee taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school. They had 2 children, Emma, 6, and her older brother Tyler, who was 9 that summer and utterly consumed with baseball cards and trying to teach himself to whistle. The family had attended the county fair every summer since Tyler was born. It was ritual. It was something Renee had grown up doing with her own parents, and she wanted her kids to have it too. The smells, the sounds, the particular chaos of a fair at dusk. She described it later, in interviews that are painful to read, as one of her favorite nights of the whole year. August 14th, 1995 was a Monday. The fair had been running since the weekend and would close out that coming Sunday. The Calloways arrived around 6 in the evening as the heat of the day was finally beginning to soften. They rode the Ferris wheel. They ate corn dogs. Tyler won a small plastic dinosaur at a ring toss. Emma demanded cotton candy and consumed approximately half of it before declaring she was full, which David laughed about later. and then stopped being able to laugh about at all. Around 8:30 in the evening, the family made their way toward the livestock arena where a performance was scheduled. Horses, some trained cattle, the kind of thing that sounds quaint until you're actually watching it, and it's genuinely impressive. The arena was packed, people were pressed in along the fence rails, and the noise was significant. The Calloways found a spot along the east rail. Emma was between her parents. Tyler was slightly ahead, trying to get a better view. At some point during the performance, Emma said she needed to use the restroom. Renee told her to hold on just a minute. And then something happened in the arena. A horse reared back unexpectedly. The crowd shifted and murmured. And in that 30 or 40-second window of distraction, Emma was no longer standing next to her mother. Renee turned. David turned. Tyler, confused, turned around, and Emma Calloway was gone. What followed in the next hour was the specific kind of terror that no parent should ever have to know. They split up and searched. They grabbed a fair employee. An announcement was made over the PA system. The lights were kept on past closing. Local sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes of the first call. A grid search of the fairgrounds was conducted. Vendors were questioned. Attendees who had not yet left were asked to stay. Emma was not found. By midnight, it was clear this was not a case of a child wandering off and getting turned around. By 1 in the morning, the Franklin County Sheriff's Department had formally opened a missing child investigation. By 3 in the morning, David Calloway sat in a folding chair outside the fair administration office and stared at a parking lot for a very long time without saying a thing at all. The early investigation moved fast, as these cases have to. The first 72 hours are critical in any missing child case, and law enforcement knew it. Deputies canvassed the area around the fairgrounds. Neighboring properties were checked. A description of Emma went out over regional police radio and was picked up by local news stations by morning. Emma Calloway, 6 years old, red hair, approximately shoulder length, blue eyes, 4 feet tall, approximately 45 pounds, wearing a yellow t-shirt with a cartoon sun on it, denim shorts, white sneakers with a Velcro strap on the right that she had a habit of leaving undone. Last seen at approximately 8:40 p.m. on the evening of August 14, 1995, at the county fairgrounds outside Columbus, Ohio. The case drew immediate local attention. Renee and David appeared on the news that first morning, visibly shattered, holding a photograph of Emma that would become the defining image of the case. In it, Emma is sitting on a porch step, squinting into the sun, grinning that oversized grin. The freckles, the red hair. She looks like the kind of kid who is perpetually about to say something funny. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was notified. The FBI field office in Columbus opened a file. The case was classified as a child abduction, not a runaway, not a parental custody dispute, not an accident. Abduction. And investigators had almost nothing to go on. No witnesses came forward who saw Emma leave. No one reported seeing a car leave in a hurry. The fair had been crowded, which worked against them. Thousands of people had been there that night. Getting a clear picture of any particular movement was nearly impossible. There was one thing, though. There was always one thing. In the southwest corner of the fairgrounds parking area, in what was designated as Lot C, there was a single security camera mounted on a utility pole. It had been installed the previous year as part of a county safety initiative. It recorded onto VHS tape. The tapes were cycled and reused on a roughly 2-week schedule, which meant that the tape from the night of August 14, 1995 had not yet been overwritten when investigators went looking for it. They found it. They reviewed it. And what they saw was a low-resolution smear of gray and black. Shapes moving through the dim light of the parking lot at the edge of the camera's range. The image quality was genuinely terrible, even by 1995 standards. The camera had been positioned primarily to cover the main parking entrance, and Lot C was toward the periphery of its field of view. Investigators could make out what appeared to be a figure leading a smaller figure toward a vehicle. That was it. They could not determine the gender of the adult. They could not read a license plate. They could not confirm the smaller figure was Emma Calloway. They documented the tape, logged it as potential evidence, and kept it. But it was not actionable. It was not enough. For years, it sat in an evidence storage facility. The investigation in those early months moved through the standard channels. Registered sex offenders in the Columbus metro area were interviewed. Former employees of the fair were looked at. Tips flooded the hotline established by the sheriff's department, hundreds of them. Investigators worked through them methodically. Most went nowhere. One name did come up in those early weeks. It came up almost accidentally through a conversation a deputy had with a church volunteer coordinator, a woman who had been helping organize the fair's community booth for several years running. She mentioned almost in passing that one of their regular volunteers had left the grounds that evening earlier than expected. Normally, this woman stayed until cleanup. That night, she had left before 9. Her name was Donna Reeves. Donna Reeves was 51 years old in the summer of 1995. She had lived in Glenbrook Crossing, the same suburb as the Calloway family, for nearly 7 years. She was a fixture at Trinity Hope Church, the mid-sized evangelical congregation where she had been a member since the late 80s. She was known as a reliable volunteer, the kind of person who showed up when others canceled, who stayed late, who brought food without being asked. She had never married. She had no children. She lived alone in a 2-bedroom house on Westerfield Lane, about 1.5 miles from the Calloway home. When investigators spoke to Donna Reeves in the first week after Emma's disappearance, she was cooperative. She said she had left the fair that evening because she had not been feeling well. A headache, she said. She had been helping at the community booth since early afternoon and had gotten overheated. She went home, took aspirin, and went to bed early. She had no information about Emma Calloway beyond what she had seen on the news. She was soft-spoken. She was clearly upset by the situation. She expressed what seemed like genuine distress about what had happened to Emma. A couple of the investigators who spoke to her later described her as grandmotherly, someone who made you feel like she was on your side. A background check on Donna Reeves turned up 2 items of note. The first was a civil court record from 1993 and another from 1991. On both occasions, Donna had applied to become a licensed foster and adoptive parent in the state of Ohio. On both occasions, the application was reviewed and denied. The reasons were not publicly disclosed, but the denials were on record. The second item was a brief notation from a neighbor dispute in 1990, resolved without incident, nothing criminal, nothing that flagged her as a predator. Investigators spoke to her twice in the first 2 weeks. She remained consistent. There was no physical evidence connecting her to Emma's disappearance. There were no witnesses who placed her near the livestock arena that evening. The parking lot tape was too degraded to be useful. And after those 2 conversations, Donna Reeves receded from the active investigation. She was not cleared exactly. She was just no longer centered. The case went cold. Not immediately, not in a sudden way, but in the slow and terrible way that cold cases happen. The tips slowed, the leads ran out. Investigators moved on to other files because they had to. The Calloway family held vigils. Renee spoke at missing children's advocacy events. David took a leave of absence from work and spent a period of months doing his own searching before accepting, not that Emma was gone, never that, but that he could not do this alone. December 1995, March 1996. The first anniversary came, then the second,
then the 5th, then the 10th. The case was reviewed periodically. A new detective in the Franklin County Sheriff's Department pulled the file in 1999 and spent 3 weeks going through everything, before concluding there was nothing new to work with. A federal review in 2003 reached the same conclusion, another review in 2008. Each time, the box containing the degraded VHS tape from Lot C went back into storage. Emma would have been 16 in the fall of 2005, 18 in 2007, 21 in 2010. Her parents kept celebrating her birthday, a detail that is deeply human or deeply heartbreaking depending on how you are holding it when you read it, probably both. What nobody in the investigation knew and could not have known was that Emma Calloway was alive. She did not know who she was. She knew only the name she had been given, a name she had answered to since she was old enough to understand what a name meant. She knew the woman who raised her. She knew the house they lived in, which was not in Ohio, had not been in Ohio for a long time. She knew the schools she attended, the friends she made, the incremental growing up that happens whether you want it to or not. She knew, if she thought hard enough, a fragment of a memory that never quite made sense. A loud place, bright lights moving overhead, the smell of animals, something soft being pressed into her hands. That was it. That was all she carried from before. The woman who took her, Donna Reeves, had constructed a story with the precision of someone who had been planning it for a long time, or the improvisation of someone who simply committed fully to a fiction and kept committing. The story changed in small ways over the years, adjusting as questions changed, but the core was simple. We moved. You were very young. You do not remember much. That is normal. And the girl who had been Emma Calloway grew up believing it. She grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, after a period of years spent further south in a smaller town in rural Georgia. She went to school, she made friends, she had hobbies and interests, and the normal landscape of an American childhood, the kind that looks unremarkable from the outside and feels enormous from the inside when you were living it. Donna Reeves, to the people around her in Tennessee, was a quiet older woman raising her niece. That was the story. The parents had been unable to care for the child. She had stepped in. It was a family matter. Nobody pressed too hard. This was a different time, a different community, and Donna had a way of presenting herself that discouraged follow-up questions.
The girl grew up and became a young woman. She graduated high school in 2007. She went to community college and earned an associate degree in early childhood education. She worked various jobs over the years: retail, administrative assistant, daycare helper. By her late 20s, she had settled into a position at a local library where she worked part-time in the children's section. She had a social media presence that was, by the standards of her generation, fairly typical. She posted photographs of her food, her friends, her cat. She shared memes. She did not think about Ohio. Donna Reeves grew old. She developed health problems over the course of the 2010s: diabetes, high blood pressure. Her mobility declined. The girl, the young woman now, took care of her with a loyalty that comes from being raised by someone, from having your whole understanding of the world shaped by one person's version of it. She called her Mom. Donna never corrected her. In the spring of 2021, Donna had a minor stroke that left her with some cognitive effects and a significant warning about the future. The young woman, who was by then 32 years old, became her primary caretaker. She reduced her hours at the library. She was there in the evenings. She drove Donna to appointments. She sat with her through the difficult nights. Donna, in those years after the stroke, was different, quieter in some ways, more likely to watch the young woman when she thought she was not being observed. Sometimes her eyes would fill, seemingly unprompted, and she would look away before anyone could ask why. Once, only once, she said, "I should have done things differently." The young woman asked what she meant. Donna said it was nothing, old thoughts. She smiled and changed the subject. There was a box in the closet of the spare bedroom. This was nothing remarkable. Donna kept things. She had a whole shelf of shoe boxes in that closet with old photographs and church bulletins and birthday cards from people who might have been dead for years by now. The young woman had been through some of them casually over the years. Holiday cards, old recipes written on index cards, a small collection of decorative pins from the 90s. She did not open the box on the upper shelf, the one that was heavier than it looked, the one secured with a rubber band and a strip of clear packing tape. She noticed it existed. She did not feel compelled to open it. On the outside, in Donna's handwriting, were 4 words: "Open when I am gone." The young woman saw this and assumed it was Donna's instructions for her estate, a will maybe, or a list of account numbers, something practical. She left it alone. She had no reason not to. Now here is where the story pivots on something so small, so ordinary, so completely 21st century that it almost feels like a joke, except it is not a joke. It is the hinge on which everything turned. On a Saturday afternoon in late January 2023, the young woman, whose name was Brianna, went to a Walmart in Knoxville to pick up a few things. She was with her longtime friend, a woman she had known since high school, the kind of easy, close friendship that develops between women who have survived bad jobs and worse boyfriends together. They were in a good mood. They had gotten the good parking spot. The store was not yet crowded. They were walking past the bakery section, the fresh donuts under the glass case, and Brianna's friend said something that made Brianna laugh hard, the sudden kind of laugh that catches you off guard, and Brianna's friend pulled out her phone on reflex and took a short video. Just a moment of joy, the kind of video that gets posted and forgotten. Brianna posted it to Facebook that evening with a short caption about having the best Saturday. She tagged her location as Knoxville. She went to bed. The video did well, better than her usual posts. Not viral exactly, but the kind of modest spread that feels good when you were used to 30 reactions. 200 reactions, then a few thousand views over the next day. Comments about the donuts. Comments about the store, a few that were just the expected absurdity of social media comment sections. And then something different. By the end of the first week, the video had been seen by a listener of a true crime podcast called Found or Forgotten. The host, who produced the show out of a home studio in Indianapolis, had been covering the Emma Calloway case in bits and pieces for 5 years. She had done 3 full episodes on it. She had an audience that knew the case well. One of those listeners, a woman who had been following the Emma Calloway disappearance since the early internet forums of the late 90s, watched Brianna's Facebook video and paused it again, and then, with shaking hands, opened a tab and pulled up the Calloway family's memorial website, which had been maintained by Renee and a small group of volunteer advocates for over 20 years. She was looking at a specific page, the medical records section, which the Calloways had voluntarily made public in the hopes that it might one day help identify Emma. There were physical descriptors: hair color, eye color, height, weight at last known age. And one specific distinguishing feature noted by Emma's pediatrician during a checkup when Emma was 4 years old, a small port wine birthmark located on the posterior surface of the left auricle, approximately 1 centimeter in diameter, with a shape described in the clinical notes as irregular, resembling a butterfly or a moth. On Brianna's Facebook video, in the frame captured at the exact moment she was laughing, her head was tilted at just enough of an angle that her hair had fallen away from her left ear. And behind that ear, on the skin where the ear met the head, was a mark, small, irregular, exactly where it should be. The listener posted about it on the Found or Forgotten subreddit at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. She included a screenshot, annotated. She included the corresponding page from the Calloway website. She wrote one sentence under the images: "I need someone else to look at this." By morning, the post had over 300 responses. By afternoon, the podcast host had been tagged so many times she lost count. By the following day, the thread had been reviewed by 2 former law enforcement consultants who contributed occasionally to the podcast, and both had said the same thing independently: "This is worth reporting." The host placed a call to the FBI field office in Columbus, Ohio. And somewhere in a suburb outside that city, Renee, who was Emma's mother for 6 years and a woman waiting for 28, was about to have the most important phone conversation of her life. But before that call could happen, before any of it could fall into place, there was something else. Something sitting in an evidence storage facility, something that had been sitting there for exactly 25 years, that was about to change everything about what investigators thought they knew. Because it turned out the tape from Lot C, the tape everyone had written off for being too degraded to matter, had never actually told its story yet. The technology that would finally read that tape had not existed in 1995. It had not existed in 2005. It had barely existed in 2015. But by 2023, a specific category of AI tools had reached a threshold that changed what was possible in cold case forensics. The process is called AI-assisted video enhancement. It works, in simplified terms, by analyzing degraded footage frame by frame and using trained neural networks to reconstruct probable visual information based on pattern recognition. It cannot create evidence that was not there. What it can do is pull signal out of noise, sharpen edges that time and magnetic tape degradation had blurred into nothing, and make legible what had previously been unreadable. When the renewed inquiry came in from the podcast host in Indianapolis, the agent assigned to review the cold file pulled the original evidence logs and found the notation about the Lot C tape. He found the documentation indicating it had been reviewed in 1995 and assessed as non-actionable due to image quality. He found the tape itself still in its original evidence bag, labeled in faded marker, sealed with yellowed evidence tape that had become brittle with age. He submitted a formal request to have the tape processed through the Bureau's Digital Forensics Unit. The results came back in late February 2023. The lead forensic technician described the process as painstaking, weeks of work across multiple processing passes, each one extracting a little more clarity from what had been nearly 3 decades of degradation. But significant portions of the tape remained recoverable. What emerged was a sequence of footage from the parking lot of Lot C on the night of August 14, 1995, beginning at approximately 9:30 p.m. and running for about 12 minutes. In that window, investigators could now see the following: a woman, heavyset, wearing a light-colored blouse and dark pants, walking through the parking lot toward a vehicle parked toward the rear of Lot C. She was holding the hand of a small child. The child had light-colored hair. The child was not resisting, and in two specific frames where the image was clearest, the child appeared to be holding something small and doll-shaped. The timestamp embedded in the footage showed the sequence occurring at 9:47 p.m. The woman's face was not fully visible for most of the sequence, but in one frame she turned her head slightly toward the camera. The angle was not ideal. The resolution, even enhanced, was limited. It was enough for a facial recognition specialist to generate a preliminary match assessment. The match came back at 71% probability to a reference photograph, Donna Reeves, from a church directory image scanned and uploaded around 1996. 71% is not a conviction. Any competent defense attorney would tear it apart, and investigators knew that. But combined with everything else now aligning, it was enough to move. A partial license plate, also partially recovered from the footage, yielded 3 legible characters. Filtered against Ohio DMV records from 1995, filtered by make and model, filtered by the residential address of Glenbrook Crossing, the list narrowed to a single entry. A 1991 Buick Century registered to Donna Marie Reeves of 14 Westerfield Lane, Glenbrook Crossing, Ohio. The lead investigator later described that moment as something you do not fully feel in the instant. You note it, you document it, you keep moving. He kept moving. The next step was Brianna. Reaching out to someone under these circumstances is one of the most delicate things an investigator can do. You are approaching someone who has no idea what is coming. You are potentially about to dismantle the entire architecture of their identity. The agent made the decision to approach through Instagram direct message, a choice that reflected deliberate strategy. A knock on the door from a federal agent unannounced can close people down. A message, something the recipient could read on their own terms and take a breath before responding to, might open a door more gently. The message identified the sender as a special agent with the FBI. It said investigators were working on a case and believed Brianna might have relevant information. It asked if she would be willing to speak by phone. It included a callback number and a case reference she could use to verify the agent's identity through the FBI's main public line. Brianna received it on a Thursday morning in early March 2023. She read it twice. She thought it was a scam. What made her pause was the professionalism. It did not ask for anything urgent. It did not pressure her. She called the main FBI line, gave them the reference number, and confirmed it was real. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long time after that. Then she called the number. The initial conversation lasted 45 minutes. The agent did not reveal the full scope of what investigators suspected. He asked about her background, her family situation, where she had grown up. He asked about Donna in a way that sounded like a routine community inquiry. Brianna answered everything openly. She described growing up in a small town in southern Georgia before moving to Knoxville as a teenager. She described Donna as her aunt who had raised her. She said her parents had been unable to care for her when she was very young, that Donna had stepped in, that she did not have contact with any other family. She said Donna had never talked much about the past, and she had mostly stopped asking. When the agent asked whether she had any distinguishing birthmarks, she paused. She said yes, behind her left ear. She had had it her whole life. Donna had always called it her little mark. Why? The agent told her there were things he needed to share with her in person and asked if she would be willing to meet with investigators at a location of her choosing, with a support person present if she liked. She asked if she was in trouble. He told her no. She agreed to meet. The meeting took place 4 days later in a private room at a government building in Knoxville.
Brianna brought her friend, the same woman from the Walmart trip in January 2023. Her friend held her hand through most of what followed. The agent walked Brianna through what investigators knew, carefully, pausing between each piece to let her absorb it. He showed her the Calloway family website. He showed her the medical record noting the birthmark. He showed her the enhanced still from the Lot C footage. He did not tell her what to think. He showed her the information and waited. Brianna was quiet for a long time. Then she asked to see the photographs of Emma Calloway again. She looked at them slowly, one by one, and then she stopped at one in particular. Emma, on a front porch step, squinting into afternoon sun, holding something in her lap. A doll, yellow yarn hair, blue dress, small embroidered smile. Brianna knew that doll. She had owned that doll. It had simply always been there among her earliest things until it was lost during the move from Georgia to Tennessee when she was 14 or 15. She had cried when she realized it was gone. She had not thought about it in years, and now she was looking at a photograph of a 6-year-old girl in Ohio, and the doll was in that girl's hands, and that girl had the same freckles and the same red hair and the same mark behind her left ear. She started to cry, the kind you move forward whether you let it or not. The agent slid a tissue box across the table and waited. When she was ready, she said, "What do you need from me?" A DNA sample, a cheek swab submitted to a certified laboratory, cross-referenced against the Calloway family's genetic profile in the National Missing Children's Database. The sample was collected that same day. Given the circumstances, it was expedited. 72 hours later, the result came back. The DNA sample collected from the young woman known as Brianna was a definitive biological match to the genetic profiles of David and Renee Calloway of Glenbrook Crossing, Ohio.
Emma Calloway was alive. She was 34 years old. She was living in Knoxville, Tennessee, and she had, until 4 days earlier, had no idea. The call to Renee Calloway was made on a Tuesday morning in mid-March 2023. The agent placed it himself. Renee answered on the second ring. David was in the next room and heard only her side. She did not speak for a long time after the agent began. She made a sound that was not quite crying and not quite words, and then she sat down on the kitchen floor, slowly, like the strength just left her all at once. David came in and found her there, phone pressed to her chest, both hands over her face. He knew before she said a word. Meanwhile, Brianna was waiting. Floating, she would later describe it. Not panic, not grief, not excitement, just suspension. When the agent called with the confirmation, she was standing in her kitchen. She noticed that detail later, that she had been standing up. He told her the match was confirmed. He told her that David and Renee Calloway had been informed and very much wanted to speak with her when she was ready. She said, "Okay." Then she sat down on the kitchen floor. She sat there for probably 20 minutes, just thinking about Donna, about the house in Georgia, about the doll with the yellow yarn hair, about a loud place with bright lights and the smell of animals and something soft being pressed into her hands. Donna Reeves had died on March 4th, 2023. A stroke, the second in 2 years, this one severe. She had been found by a neighbor when she did not answer her door for 2 days. She was 79 years old. Brianna had been with her in the final weeks. She had cared for her, sat with her, held her hand through the difficult nights. Donna had never said a word. Or rather, Donna had said everything, just not out loud.
It was 3 days after the DNA confirmation, 4 days after Donna's funeral, that Brianna finally went to the spare bedroom closet to begin sorting through her things. She took the shoeboxes down one at a time. Church bulletins, old cards, the quiet clutter of a private life. And then the box on the upper shelf, the heavy one, the rubber band and the strip of packing tape and 4 words in faded handwriting on the outside. Open when I am gone. She sat down on the floor with the box in her lap, worked the tape free, and opened it. Inside, arranged with deliberate care, were several items. A folded document, Brianna's original birth certificate, the real one. The one that said Emma Calloway and listed David and Renee Calloway as parents. A small photograph of a house in a Columbus suburb she did not recognize. A printed page from the Calloway Memorial website, printed on paper that had yellowed over the years. And underneath all of that, held together with a binder clip, 14 handwritten pages in Donna's careful slanted cursive. The first page had no date. It began with 2 words, I am sorry. What those pages contained was a full account of what Donna had done on the night of August 14, 1995, and in the years that followed. She had written it not as a legal confession, but as a private reckoning, a document addressed to the person she had shaped and wronged in equal measure. She described arriving at the fair. She described the crowd. She described seeing Emma near the livestock arena, separated by a few feet from her parents in the press of people. She described the doll she had brought, yellow yarn hair and a blue dress, bought at a craft fair weeks earlier. She described speaking to Emma, the child's face, asking if Emma wanted to take the doll for a walk. She described walking to Lot C. She described driving out of the fairgrounds with Emma asleep in the back seat at 9:51 p.m. She did not provide operational details. She described the internal experience, the terror that arrived immediately and completely, the hours of driving without a destination, the rest stop somewhere past midnight where she sat with Emma sleeping in the back seat and understood there was no going back, only forward. She described the reasoning she had built around what she was doing, not to excuse herself. She said that plainly, I am not excusing what I did. She described the 2 court rejections, the want that had lived in her for longer than she could name, and she described what it felt like to look at Emma in that crowd and make the choice that destroyed a family and defined the rest of her own life. She described raising Brianna, the story she had constructed, the fear that never fully left, that particular terror of a neighbor's comment in 1999 that had kept her barely sleeping for 3 weeks. She described the guilt as something structural, a weight she had built her life around. She wrote, after the first stroke, I knew the second was coming. I did not know when, but I knew. She had assembled the box in the weeks following that first stroke in 2021. She had written the letter across several sessions, returning to it, adding to it, making sure everything needed was there. The birth certificate, the photograph, the memorial page with the number to call. She wrote, I could not tell her while I was alive. I was too afraid of what she would feel about me. I know that is selfish. Everything about this has been selfish from the beginning, but I am leaving this so that she will know, and so that when she knows, she will also know that I loved her every single day. That does not make any of what I did right. It just means it is also true. The final page was addressed directly to Brianna, the name she had given her, the name she had whispered over her when she was sick, the name she had said aloud into the empty house after she left for work. It ended with a single line. "You always deserved to know who you were. I just was not brave enough to be the one to tell you." Brianna sat on that floor until the light in the room changed. Her roommate came home and found her there and sat down beside her without asking questions, which was exactly what was needed. The next morning, Brianna called the FBI agent and surrendered the entire contents of the box to the investigation, voluntarily and without hesitation. She kept a copy of the letter. The letter became a central document in the case. Donna Reeves was dead, so there would be no trial, but the case would be formally closed, the record corrected, and Emma Calloway would be legally restored to her own identity.
That process took several months. It was handled with care by the prosecutor's office and the FBI in consultation with the Calloway family and with Brianna herself. The reunion between Brianna and the Calloway family did not happen immediately. It required intentional, careful time. There were phone calls first. A first call with Renee that lasted an hour and a half and covered almost nothing practical and somehow everything important. A quieter call with David. A video call where they simply looked at each other for a while. Tyler, now 37 and living in Indianapolis with his wife and 2 children, was told by his parents before the in-person reunion. He had been 9 years old when Emma disappeared. When his parents called him, he did not speak for about 2 minutes. Then he said her name, her original name. Then he said he needed to sit down. The in-person meeting happened in June 2023 at a hotel in Cincinnati, a midpoint city chosen deliberately, neither family's geography. Renee walked into that room and saw her daughter for the first time in nearly 28 years. Emma was 6 the last time Renee had held her. She was 34 now. She had her father's eyes, which Renee had not expected. The red hair had deepened over the years into something richer, with a few strands of gray beginning to show at the temples. They stood about 4 feet apart. Neither spoke. Then Renee took one step forward and opened her arms. And the woman who had been both Emma and Brianna took one step forward and accepted the embrace. What happened in that room belongs to the family. What we know is that they spent several hours together that first day and agreed to keep going, carefully, on their own terms. They did not attempt to reconstruct the family structure severed in 1995. What they built instead was something slower and more honest. Phone calls, visits, a birthday, eventually a holiday. The architecture of a new relationship being constructed between people who were, in some fundamental way, already family. The Found or Forgotten podcast devoted 3 episodes to the resolution of the case, produced in collaboration with the Calloway family and with Brianna's full consent. The AI enhancement of the Lot C tape was covered widely as a case study in forensic technology applied to cold cases. Several other cold case units around the country reached out to the FBI to inquire about applying similar methods to footage from their own files. There is something almost unbearable about that detail. The tape. The footage existed. A significant part of the answer was there in 1995 on a cassette in a parking lot in Ohio. 28 years of a family in grief. 28 years of a woman living a life built on someone else's crime. 28 years of a little girl's face on a website that never stopped asking for information. And the tape was there the whole time, waiting for the technology that could finally see it. Donna Reeves died before that technology arrived. Whether that was coincidence or something she was aware of and quietly counted on, nobody can say with certainty.
What she left behind suggests a woman who had made a kind of peace with the idea that the truth would outlast her, that she had set it in motion without being able to stay for what came next. There are people in the communities following this case who have argued for months about Donna Reeves. Some point to the letter, to the evident love, to the fact that she prepared the truth to be found. Others point to everything before the letter: the abduction, the destroyed family, the 28 years of silence while Renee and David woke up every morning in a house where one room was still wrong. Both of those things are real. Neither resolves the other. Brianna has said she is not interested in other people's verdicts about Donna. She says she has to find her own. She says that is going to take a long time, possibly the rest of her life, and she has made her peace with that. She has also said one thing she is certain of in a brief interview published in the fall of 2023. It is perhaps the most precise thing said about this case by anyone involved in it. She said, "I was loved by someone who did something unforgivable, and I was loved by people I did not know existed who never stopped looking. I do not know how to hold both of those things yet, but I am trying." As of the time this episode was produced, Brianna remains in Knoxville. She has visited Ohio 3 times. She is in regular contact with the Calloway family. She has met Tyler's children, her niece and nephew, and they call her Aunt Bree, which she finds both strange and wonderful. She has not changed her first name. She has legally added Calloway to her last name, a private decision she has not explained publicly, and she does not owe anyone an explanation for. The case of Emma Calloway, opened on August 14, 1995, was formally closed in September 2023. Resolved. Victim located and identified. The investigation spanned exactly 28 years and 1 month. Emma Calloway was 6 years old when she disappeared at a county fair outside Columbus, Ohio. She is 34 now. She is building something out of what was broken and what was found, on her own terms, in her own time, in the city she chose and the life she is still writing. That is where we leave her. Not at the fair, not in the parking lot, not in the box on the shelf. Here, present, moving forward. That is the only place worth leaving her. If this story moved you the way it moved us, please take a moment to leave a like and subscribe to this channel. Every one of those actions helps this content reach people who are searching for it, and your support is genuinely what keeps this work going. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.